Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. We now know who unbeaten up-and-comer Liana Cruz is going to be fighting later on this month on the 18th in the 2300 Arena in Pennsylvania as part of a Cohen promotion show. That's Kaylee Reese. That's Brian Cohen. It appears that young Liana is going to be facing Belgium's own Amy Naert, experienced veteran who's been around the block, sporting a professional record of 11 wins with 4 losses, no draws, 3 knockouts, having never been knocked out in 15 professional bouts. She's got more fights and more rounds in the bank than young Liana. 36 years old to Liana, who's 27, 15 professional fights to Liana's 9. Keeping with the tradition of tough Belgian fighters, whether you're talking about Femke Hermans or Delphine Persoon, Belgium does produce some tough fighters, some tough broads. The very outspoken Liana Cruz is going to have one in front of her later on this month. Liana Cruz, who I like to think of as an East Coast version of Sinicia Estrada. She's brash, she's outspoken, she's talented. A natural talent, I want to say, because Liana Cruz has no amateur background. She's basically learning on the job, though you'd never know it to look at her because she looks like a natural. Coming off of what was a productive year in the previous year, Liana saw action 3 times. Once in March, again in May, then again in September. Amy Naert, who she's going to be facing, saw action 2 times last year, once in September, then again in December. She's coming off a win over Sarah Marjanovic. This fight is scheduled for 8 rounds in the women's super flyweight division. Super flyweight, that's where Irma Garcia holds the IBF, Ashley Gonzalez holds the WBC, Mizuki Hiruta holds the WBO, and up until recently, Argentina's own Clara Lescurat held the WBA. It was recently announced that she has retired and the WBA title is now vacant. Look at the fighters, a look at Amy Naert. Definitely a capable fighter, a scrapper, mid-range to inside, that's her sweet spot. She can do a little bit of everything. Beat those feet, move and punch, try to create some distance in order to box up an advancing opponent.
Yeah, she's not bad.
Though at what level she exhibits these qualities is what essentially separates her from everybody else.
What separates her from Liana?
Well, it's the little things like range of motion or fluidity. How fluid are a fighter's movements? How fluid are their combinations when they're letting their hands go?
Quality of the combinations.
Shot selection. What punches a fighter is throwing? When and where are they throwing them? Are they landing? The thing that stands out to me about Amy Naert is that she's very tense and very tight.
At all times.
Torso's kind of static, and that's not saying that she doesn't bend at the waist and knees so much as when she does, she still looks kind of tense, kind of stiff.
Robotic.
Shoulders are kind of tight, not loose, not flowy, like what you get from Liana Cruz. With Liana, the punches just flow.
Like a wellspring into a koi pond.
What?
That's saying that I like Liana Cruz's range of motion and quality of movement more than I like Amy Naert's.
I think Liana Cruz is better on the outside, on the move, and better on the inside, in the phone booth, than Amy Naert. That in the exchange, I'd give Liana the edge.
Physicality.
I also happen to think Liana Cruz is a better physical specimen than Amy Naert. That Liana is just a little bit faster and a little bit stronger, a bit meaner. She's mean-spirited. If you've seen her in action or any number of interviews available with Liana Cruz, she's spiteful. She wants to hurt you. With a knack for the theatrical, often wearing superhero-themed costumes for her ring walks. She's quite the personality, quite the character.
And I think she's gonna have Amy Naert's number later on this month on the 18th.
What I think promises to be a scrappy affair because Cruz and Amy Naert are both capable of the same things. One fighter, I think, is just better at them, and that fighter is Cruz. I'm going with Liana to win a points decision. I think that when push comes to shove, she will outdog the Belgian fighter. Cruz on points is the pick later on this month in Philly. In men's super lightweight news, another look at the ongoing feud between Teofimo Lopez and Toprank in what is his effort to try and break away and achieve free agency. Teofimo said Toprank is looking to say, I am defaming the company. Now you know I love you, and you need me. If not, then release me to the wolves. Fight fans are asking when I will return to the ring.
He wants to make a clean break.
It's not like several fighters haven't achieved free agency, made a clean break from Toprank in recent years, because they have. Shakur Stevenson, Terrence Crawford, Jose Ramirez, Zurdo Ramirez.
They all made a clean break and went elsewhere. They all did. The difference between those fighters and Teofimo, I think, is they saw out the life of their deals where he wants to terminate his prematurely. Essentially, he doesn't want to honor it, and he's willing to sit on the sidelines,
on the bench, presumably until such a time as the deal expires. Now, when exactly that's supposed to be, your guess is as good as mine, though time is the one thing you don't get back.
You can't buy it, and there isn't a surplus of it. When the fighters are young, they think they have all the time in the world as the days on the calendar roll by.
Years ago, I used to hear people say that Floyd Mayweather, going about his business the way that he did, had an adverse effect on the market and an adverse effect on the sport. I didn't believe it then, but I see it now.
I see what they were talking about.
It's not that Floyd made a mistake or did something wrong per se, so much as him going about things the way that he did, and so many people having seen that, they got it in their heads that they can do the same thing. He ushered in a generation of malcontent fighters that are never satisfied and always want more, make things so much more difficult than they need to be, that if you want free agency, Teofimo, simply honor the deal. See out the life of your deal.
Then you're done.
Now, every fighter claims to be their own boss, lawyer at their side giving them bad legal advice, while fighters make themselves out to be the victims.
And the promoters are supposed to be the bad guys.
Bad.
As if there's anything bad or anything wrong with wanting a return on your investment. Because for fighters like Teofimo and for their careers to get off the ground, a promoter must first make that investment. And Toprank did. They're holding up their end of the bargain. They're offering Teofimo fights.
They offered you Brian Norman last year, and they offered you Subriel Matias this one. You'd rather sit out. You'd rather not fight, presumably waiting out the deal. And so long as Toprank is holding up their end of the bargain, and I'm pretty sure they are.
Why are you so sure?
Because if they weren't, then a fighter like Teofimo, an ungrateful one, would be able to sue them for breach of contract.
For not providing him fights or not honoring the contract minimum that they agreed to at the beginning of the deal.
That if they weren't holding up their end of the bargain, Teofimo would happily use that against them to constitute a breach and void the existing agreement. If he's still there and he's sitting out,
it's because he can't.
Operating out of fear that he will lose his next fight. You see, I call it fear because if you like your chances against the guys that they're offering you, you just fight them so that you can hurry up and get away.
See out the life of the deal, then go do your own thing.
Other fighters already have, so it's not like it can't be done.
He's just trying to be a wise ass.
That's always the situation with Teofimo. He's just trying to be a wise ass.
All of the cryptic talk and Lao Tzu quotes. Fancies himself a philosopher.
Not here for a philosophy class. Here for boxing. And if you stay out long enough, the boxing community at large will forget. The fighters don't want to hear it, but they're not as valuable as they think they are. Do you hear this, kid? You need me?
Toprank needs you.
Better fighters than you have left the Toprank banner, and Toprank is still standing. You are not as instrumental, anywhere near as instrumental to their business as you make yourself out to be. You are an expendable asset. Nobody likes to hear that, but it's the truth. And they're not the villains in your story because you want to terminate your deal prematurely. You want to be released.
That's what it is.
They had to release every disgruntled fighter just because that fighter wants to go somewhere else all of a sudden while they're under contract. That would set a bad precedent moving forward.
Then every fight is going to start piping up as soon as they want out of their deal.
It's all very simple. The sooner you get back to fighting, the sooner your deal with Top Rank might be over. But if you'd rather sit out and do nothing, earn nothing,
go ahead. It's not costing them any money.
It's saving them money that they don't have to fritter away on you. It's not hurting them. It's hurting you. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, Timothy Bradley Jr. wants Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford, and he favors Terence Crawford, which we've talked about. Hall of Famer and ESPN boxing analyst Timothy Bradley Jr. favors Terence Crawford in a matchup with Canelo Alvarez. Bradley took to his own YouTube channel to argue in favor of Crawford. Everyone keeps talking about the weight, Bradley said, and indeed, Crawford only recently left welterweight for junior middle, while Alvarez has fought at 168 since late 2020. Oh, he's gonna knock him out. When the hell was the last time Canelo knocked somebody out?
2021.
It has been a while. Alvarez last scored a stoppage against Caleb Plant in November of 2021. Since then, he has failed to knock out established foes in Dmitry Bivol and a 40-year-old Gennady Golovkin, but he has also gone the distance with opponents thought to be nowhere near his skill level, such as John Ryder, Jaime Munguia, Edgar Berlanga. Jermel Charlo, a natural junior middle, also went the distance with Canelo, though he was not remotely competitive with the super middleweight king.
Yeah, but even with that, those are all naturally bigger men than Terence Crawford.
Some of which you spent the entire fight circling away from Canelo Alvarez, which is what kept them in the fight and allowed them to survive.
So not only are these bigger guys than Terence Crawford, which might lend itself to their punch resistance, but a good number of them spent the fight running from Canelo.
Y'all can quit with that. He's gonna knock Crawford out? Come on, man, Bradley said. Didn't we just see somebody, Alexander Usyk, fight a guy in Tyson Fury who was quote-unquote 50 pounds heavier? Canelo's the same height as Crawford. He's not a natural 168.
No, he isn't. He's a naturally smaller fighter who moved up in weight, though after about 5 years as a super middle, it's safe to say that he's fully acclimated.
Usyk is a great fighter, absolutely. But you know who else is a great one? Crawford. The great ones know how to figure it out.
But isn't Canelo Alvarez great? If he's a great fighter, doesn't that also apply to him? Can't he figure it out?
Bradley also highlighted Crawford's 74-inch reach, 3.5 inches longer than Canelo's, and his ability to reduce his opponent's output with his counterpunching. Alvarez is already a low-output fighter. Bradley thinks Crawford can win a decision by working long range, using straight shots in between Alvarez's looping hooks, and tiring Canelo out down the stretch. Don't go running away from a fight now, Canelo, Bradley said, referring to the unified super middleweight champion's apparent avoidance of David Benavidez. Imitating Canelo's higher-pitched voice, Bradley said, "Remember what you said. Easy fight, easy fight, easy fight." Though a cluster of analytical boxing minds share Bradley's opinion, most in the fight game believe the size and power difference is too great for Crawford to impose his skills. Bradley, known for his strong points of view, is confident in his unpopular take. "I'm gonna get back to my haterade," he announced towards the end of the video, sipping his drink. You already know. Whether the boxing world will get to know, a Canelo versus Crawford matchup would seem to be up to Alvarez himself. It's his fight to accept or reject. What's he gonna do? He needs to fight somebody in May, somebody worthwhile. There is a large section of the boxing community that was not satisfied with his choices in either Jaime Munguia and Edgar Berlanga. They feel it's high time he fought somebody who's more established or somebody with a name. Is that Terence?
Doesn't mean you agree with them, you yourself, but there are a lot of people out there that feel that way, that it's time that Canelo stepped it up. To some people, the Crawford fight would be a step up from those fights.
My humble opinion, Terence Crawford has already proven himself to be a better fighter than John Ryder, Jaime Munguia, or Edgar Berlanga, the vast majority of fighters that Canelo has been fighting the last 2 or 3 years, but he's not a bigger fighter than they are, and size matters.
Even if he's better in a nuts and bolts kind of way, he's not bigger, and you have to account for that size differential.
So we might be closer to that fight than people think, according to Boxing Insider Rick Glacier. I'm being told by a very reliable source that the Canelo versus Crawford possibility has greatly increased in the last couple of days. If signed, no word if it would be in May or September. The world awaits. What I don't think Timothy Bradley factored into his evaluation of the fight is while he might think that Terence Crawford can box up Canelo Alvarez long range because Canelo's not that big and Terence has longer arms.
Israel Madrimov ain't that big, and he was touching Terence Crawford up. Before that, Igis Kavaliauskas. He landed a hard right hand on Terence Crawford that unofficially knocked him down.
You have to look at both sides. Do you really need to be the tallest fighter or the longest fighter to land a punch on Terence Crawford?
No.
And are these fighters that have? Are they of the same ilk? Do they compete on the same level as Canelo? Are they as good as Canelo?
No.
Do they have the same level of experience as Canelo? Shot selection as Canelo? Durability as Canelo? Power?
No.
It's just one aspect of the fight. Looking at Terence's physical dimensions and how he goes about fighting a fight, you're only looking at things through the Terence Crawford lens. What about the Canelo Alvarez lens? That if Terence don't pack a big enough punch to get this guy's respect, there's not going to be a whole lot stopping Canelo from walking him down.
And what about Terence Crawford's propensity to get his lick back after he's been touched, after he's been hit?
I've been watching Terence Crawford ever since he was down there at 135, and that happens to be one of his characteristics that I like. Don't land clean on him, don't land a punch, because he's going to want his lick back. He's going to go get it.
Yeah.
Though with Canelo, that would be a bad idea. Getting into an exchange, a gunfight with him. Remember why Timothy Bradley thinks that Terence can win this fight? Because he can move and punch, box from the outside. He's got longer arms than Canelo. So what you're talking about is a long-range fight.
Short range, he could be in trouble.
Short range is Canelo Alvarez's sweet spot. Short range, I would give Canelo the advantage. And I do think he's the stronger puncher of the two. I do.
Really would be some scene if they made this fight.
Two of the more prominent figures in the American boxing scene to stimulate the boxing economy here in America, where they are less concerned about the Artur Beterbievs and Dimitri Bivols of the world, the Tyson Furies, the Alexander Usyks, the Fabio Wardleys, those more international fighters.
The Americans are just not as interested in them, but if you made this, I can almost guarantee the Americans would get out of bed for this one.
The incentive for Canelo is that, if nothing else, in fighting Terence Crawford, who a lot of people think he walks through, he would make a lot of money. A lot of money.
Same applies to Terence, and just imagine if Terence won.
It's not a victory you can downgrade. It's not a victory you can diminish like so many have been trying to diminish his win over Errol Spence Jr. If he beat Canelo, that's the mountaintop.
So I see why he wants it.
I would like for Turki El Sheikh to deliver this fight. At super middleweight, there's just not a lot left for Canelo Alvarez to do. Though ultimately, the ball is in Canelo Alvarez's court to either accept or reject this fight, and we'll see what he does.